Hi, I'm Gus Abraham, a digital art nerd, and I would love to help you breathe 3D. Welcome to the second class of this fresh start in 3D modeling. If you're just joining this series or you have little knowledge on some fundamentals in 3D design, I'll advise that you watch the first class, then come over to this, as the topics we covered will help you understand what we'll be doing in this class better. In this class, we'll be learning how to transform primitives into products using cylinders to demonstrate this. Now, transforming and modifying primitives is amongst the popular ways of modeling things and objects. At the end of this class, you should be able to model all these products, also with their detailed covers. And if you want to practice more and support the channel, you can get the Clay Image Reference Bundle using the link in the description below. It consists of over 25 clay product references to help you practice and model more products after you take part in this training. Also, if you're into NFTs, you can patronize my Voguebot NFT project on OpenSea that has a crazy utility where I create a free animated fashion NFT for every piece sold. Also, kindly subscribe to the channel. And you can also join my 3D community on Telegram for more conversations, tips, challenges, resource sharing, and growth opportunities. And for this class, these are the 4 products that we'll be modeling, and we'll be taking this product one after the other. The class will go in a progressive manner where I'll repeat certain basics as I start, and then as we progress, I will repeat less so that you can also test yourself and apply what you've heard earlier. So if there's anything that confuses you at the latter part of this tutorial, you can always refer to earlier parts to see where I explain them better. So let's begin. A primitive is simply a basic or primary shape that you use to create other complex shapes. You can take this as building blocks or what you start building from. Examples of these are cubes, spheres, cones, discs, planes, figures, or in this case, cylinders. So let's set up our scene with image references. Now the first thing I'll be doing will be to divide our viewport into 2 panels. So I'll go to panel here, and then under arrangement, I'll select 2 views side by side. Now here we'll retain our perspective viewport camera where we can move freely in our 3D space. And here I'll retain this flat angle camera, but I'll use our front viewport camera. And that's because our image reference captures the front of the product. So to load our image reference, I'll go to options here, and then I'll select configure down here. Then I'll make sure I'm selecting back here. Then under image, I'll click these 3 dots and to ask me to load my image reference. So I'll select the appropriate image reference I want. Then first, I will move this image reference above the grid line here. So I'll click and drag this offset on the y-axis, and I'll take it up here like this. Then because our image reference actually has a transparent background, let's make Cinema4D recognize that background. So I'll go to alpha mode here, and I'll change this from none to normal. Then the next thing I'll do will be to change the transparency of the reference. So I'll increase the transparency here, and I can just stop this at 78%. So we'll shape our object here in the flat view, then we'll see how it comes out in our perspective view and also take some actions here. So let's zoom in on the first product that we'll start modeling. So as you know, we're starting with a cylinder. So let's add a cylinder to our scene and explain a few things. So go over here and then left click and hold this a little to bring these options. If you just tap this, it will bring a cube by default. So make sure you left click and hold this down a little bit and then select your cylinder here. So here I can come over and with my move tool, I can drag this to this area and just place it here first. Then I can zoom back in to frame this particular product. So when you bring a cylinder in Cinema4D, it's first in the parametric state, and that means you can't access the point, edges, or polygons of this mesh, but we can view those point, edges, or polygons. So to view them, we can go to our display here, and we can change the shading to lines. So this only helps us see, but we can't affect them. So what's important to do is to choose the number of segments that we want to start shaping around this mesh. So note that we'll always be starting with low segments to shape our mesh for more control, and then when we're done shaping our mesh, we'll put it into a subdivision surface to smoothen it. So that means our mesh will look like this after we shape it, and then it will look like this after we subdivide it. So to decide on how many rotational segments we'll have for this cylinder, we need to observe the product we're about to model. Now this product is more of a simple product that has, say, perfect circles in different sizes. So you can imagine that this is a connection of different perfect circles that keeps growing gradually here. So for this, we'll just need segments that can turn into perfect circles when we subdivide it. The threshold I like to use is 8 segments to turn into a perfect circle. But when you have more details on your object, just like this product will model here, you might want to increase your segments to make room for you to create these details. So for this product, I can either use 8, 10 or 12. So I'll use 12 rotational segments. And I'll go to my model mode here. And for the radius, I can adjust that manually here to fit the reference. So I'll just use these 2 points as we're still in our parametric mode. I'll use these 2 points to place and scale this cylinder to mark my starting point at the base. So once I'm good with this, I can now move from my parametric state and then go to my polygonal mode so that I can access the points, the edges and the polygons of this cylinder. Note that once we change this from a parametric object to a polygonal object, you can access these initial parameters that we used to set this cylinder. So let's go ahead to convert this. I'll go over here and then I'll click this to make it editable. So now this is a polygonal object, and you can also use C on your keyboard to do that. So typically when you load a cylinder like this in Cinema4D, the caps may not be connected automatically. So if I go to my polygon mode here, naturally when I double click, it's going to select the entire object. So you see if I drag this up, this is not connected. So to connect this, once you make it a polygonal object, you can go to your model mode here and you can just hit U and O. So that will optimize your mesh. So U and O is to optimize your mesh. So once you hit U, make sure you're not moving your mouse. Remember, because that option will go away. So you hit U, don't move your mouse. Then you hit O and that will optimize your mesh. You can also do this by coming to any of these modes, then hit Ctrl A to select everything. Then you can right click and you can select optimize here, or you also do U and O to optimize it. So now you see if I double click on this mesh, it selects everything because it's now connected. So I can use my loop selection tool. I can hit U and L and you see to highlight this face. So I'll left click to select that. Then I just want to ensure that my cylinder is matching my reference properly. So I can go to my model mode and select my move tool. Then I'll just drag this and I can go to my scale tool also and I'll just scale this appropriately here. And if I go to my polygon mode, my selection should still be made there. Now note that hitting E on your keyboard is the shortcut for accessing your move tool. Hitting R is the shortcut for accessing your rotate tool. And T is the shortcut for accessing your scale tool. So what we want to do here is to duplicate these polygons and shape it along this reference. So we can either use our extrude tool. If I hit D on my keyboard, it will bring my extrude tool. Make sure create caps is unchecked. And if I just left click and drag, it can help me extrude that, but that will be a long process. So the faster way to do this is to go to your move tool here. For this particular object, we'll be extruding it on the y-axis alone. So to duplicate this, you can hold Ctrl on your keyboard, and then when you click on this axis, it will duplicate those polygons for you. So you can hold Ctrl down again, then left click and drag to duplicate. This is also the same as extruding polygons. So holding Ctrl down in Cinema4D and moving your object or your mesh helps you duplicate that object or mesh. So I'll just return here. So I'll duplicate this again and I'll stop here. Then I'll hit T for my scale tool. Now note that I'm not going to scale this on a particular axis. I'm not scaling this on the x-axis to fit the reference. Remember, it's a perfect circle. If I scale this on the x-axis alone, see what it creates for me. So I want to scale this uniformly. So to scale this uniformly, just go outside your gizmo. You can left click anywhere outside your gizmo, not on these areas. I need to select all the axes and scale this uniformly. So I'll scale this and drop here. Then I'll go to my move tool again. Then I'll hold Ctrl down to duplicate and extrude this way. Then I'll hit T for my scale tool and I'll scale this uniformly again. I'll duplicate this by holding Ctrl. I'll scale this uniformly. Then I'll just repeat that action for the rest. Then when I'm done shaping that, I'll delete these faces here. So I'll go to the base now. So I'll hit U and L to create a loop selection here. Then I'll hit I to extrude inner. Then once I extrude inner, I'll use my move tool and I'll just drag this down a little bit. Then I'll hit I again. Then I'll extrude this inwards. And I can just put this down a little bit. Then I can use my scale tool to just scale this uniformly a little. Then I'll hit I, extrude this one more time. And for this, I'll just drag this up. So I can come to my edge mode, make a loop selection here, U and L. Select this loop here. And I'll use my move tool to just move this down a little bit. Then I'll use my scale tool to scale this uniformly out this way. So I don't want this edge to also have this sharp transition, so my extrusion can also be smooth. So I'll go to my edge mode, then I'll select this loop here. Then I'll use my slide tool, M and O. I'll just slide this up a little, this way. Then I'll also select this edge over here, and I'll slide it up a little. So I'll go to the top over here, and then I'll create another detail here. So I'll go to my polygon mode. I'll hit U and L to make a loop selection here. I'll hit I to extrude this inwards. And I'll hit T to scale this outwards a little bit, this way. So now, what I'll do is I will extrude this whole polygons to make the object thick. So I'll hit Ctrl A on my keyboard, and I'll hit D to bring up my extrude tool. So here, ensure that create caps is checked. So I can either extrude this outwards or inwards. But for me, I would take this inwards. So let's just preview this extrusion from the top here. So I'll just extrude this inwards this way. So this object has now become thick. So let's add a subdivision surface to subdivide this and make this smooth. So over here, you can left click once to drop a subdivision surface, or you can just left click and hold this a little to bring out this menu. Then you select your subdivision surface. Then the next thing to do is to drag this cylinder and drop it inside this subdivision surface. So as you can see, once I put my mouse on the subdivision surface, it brings out this arrow facing down. So once I release my mouse, it will make that cylinder a child of the subdivision surface. And we can now minimize this group by hitting this minus sign here. And we can also open that up by hitting the plus sign here. Now the faster way to do this is to select your object, then hold Alt before you select the subdivision surface. That way it will automatically make the cylinder the child of the subdivision surface. So that's how to apply this subdivision surface to this cylinder. Let's just go back to our model mode, and then we can change this displaying back to a solid shading mode, this first here. So if we zoom out, this is what we should have now. You can see the base we just created over here. So if you still want to make some adjustments, you can go to your cylinder. You can uncheck the subdivision surface here to put that off temporarily. You can check that back to bring it in. So if I uncheck this, I have this cylinder here, and I can go to my polygon mode and I can keep adjusting, or you can adjust with the subdivision surface on, and you'll see your effects happen in real time. So maybe here, let's add another loop cut. You can switch this back to our move tool. You can go to your model mode to always preview what you have. If I hit F1 on my keyboard, I can expand this view and we can see this better. So here we'll also be starting with a cylinder, but now we'll try to add more segments to our cylinder so that we can achieve this detail we have over here. So I'll add a cylinder here, and let's just drag that and place that properly. So to determine the number of segments I'll use for this cylinder, I just want to take into account this detail that I will be creating over here. But before I continue, let's just group and arrange this properly. So you can group everything here. I'll just hit Ctrl A in my object panel here, and I'll hit Alt G on my keyboard, and that will add that into a null. Then we can name this null by double clicking on it, and we can name that product. Then let's open up this null here, and for this one in particular, since this is our first product, let's hit Alt G again with it selected, and I'll put that in a null. So if you open this, this is what we have. So I'll name this wine bottle. Then for this, I'll put this also in a null. I'll hit Alt G, and I'll name this fat bottle. So I'll open up this null and select the cylinder since this is what we're working with. I'll first set the rotational segment to 12. Then I'll change our display to show our lines. If we were not going to create the handle detail for this product, then 12 rotational segments will be enough. But since we'll use some segments at the front and back of this cylinder to create the handle detail, it will be better to use a higher number overall so we can still complete the perfect circle after we create the handle. All this will be clearer when we start modeling the product. So now I'll set the rotational segments to 14. Then I'll make it a polygonal object, or I'll make it editable here. So I'll hit C on my keyboard to make this object editable. So now we can see our segments properly. So we are fortunate to have two edges at the front and back aligned at the area where the hole for the handle begins. If this is not the case with another product you are modeling, you can simply rotate the cylinder until you have it aligned at the area you want. So first, before we create any detail, let's create the entire base mesh of this product. So I'll scale this first and place it here. Then remember to optimize this model, as the caps on top here won't be connected to this cylinder by default. So you can hit U and O to optimize that. So if I come to my polygon mode, I'll hit U and L to select these polygons here. Then I can go to my move tool and start extruding this. Then I'll hold Ctrl down to duplicate and extrude this way. So ignore these details for now, we'll come back later to do them. But for this, we'll just scale this out, remember, uniformly this way. I'll scale this uniformly also this way. Then I'll just repeat that action for the rest. Then for the top here, let's create this way. So I'll scale this in a little bit. Then I'll extrude it. I'll scale it inwards. I'll extrude it a little here also. Extrude it again to this point. And I'll scale it out here. And I'll extrude it upwards to this point. I'll extrude it again. I'll scale it inwards. Then I'll extrude it one more time. Then probably scale it inwards this way. So I'll have this interesting top. Then I can delete this cap here. So let's also go to the base and shape that. I'll hit U and L to select these polygons here. Then I'll hold Ctrl down to duplicate and extrude this way. Scale this. Then I'll just extrude and scale the selected polygons to match this reference. So again, at the base, I'll do what I did before. Come over here, scale this down this way. Now hit I. Now hit I again. Then I'll just drag this up. Then I can just select these edges here. Then I'll hit T to scale this inwards a little bit. Again, you can shape this as you want, or just follow how I'm shaping it for this tutorial. So I'll scale this out, then just drag this up to this point a little bit. And I'll come over here and I'll drag this inwards, and I'll scale this also. So next, let's create this detail on the handle here. So I'll select all the faces here, and to do that I can hit 9 on my keyboard to bring up my live selection tool, or you can just go up here and select your live selection tool. Then in the properties of the live selection tool, I will uncheck only select visible elements so that it will select all the faces that fall within my selection. So currently, if I just select with this checked, you see it only select what is visible here, and that's just this area. But I want to select everything to this point here. So I can manually select that, but I just want to use this dimension to ensure I'm selecting perfectly. Before we continue, let's hide this wine bottle. So you can go up here, and then if you click this left dot once and click it again to show red, it will hide this wine bottle from our viewport. The dot below is to hide it from our render, and when nothing is checked, it also makes it visible. So if you want to bring this back to the viewport, you can just click it again, and then now it's back. So let's hide that. So I'll uncheck only select visible elements, and I'll just select again. So this way we're sure it has selected everything that falls within the selection here. So the first thing we'll do will be to extrude this inward. So hit I on your keyboard, and let's just left click and drag a little. So once we've extruded that way, go to your scale tool And now what we'll do is we'll just scale this only on the z-axis here. And when we want to stop is when this area here is fat enough for our handle. So this is okay here. The next thing we'll do will be to select these polygons here. So let's use our live selection tool and uncheck only select visible elements. So I'll just select these two polygons here, and I'll select this and this. So here again, I'll hit I to extrude inwards, and I'll extrude it this way. Then I'll delete these polygons by hitting delete on my keyboard. So now we've created a hole for our handle. All we need to do now is connect these edges together so it forms a proper handle that is closed. So let's go to our edge mode, and the tool we'll be using here is our bridge tool. So make sure no edge is selected, then right click and let's select our bridge tool here, bridge. So to bridge, just left click on the edge you want to bridge, then drag it to the other edge and then you release your selection. So let's do that here also. I'll left click on this edge, then I'll drag it to this edge here, and then I'll release it. And I'll do that here also. Then also here. So watch where I'm bridging the areas that I just deleted. So I'll select this edge here and I'll also bridge it this way. Then I'll also select this edge and I'll bridge it this way. Make sure you're not bridging it this way down to any edge below here. So you can always frame your camera properly to make sure you're working with the right edges. So I'll select this edge here and I'll bridge it this way. So now this way we have a rough handle. So let's just make some adjustments. We'll start adjusting some points to shape this properly. So I'll go to my live selection tool and I'll go to my point mode. Then let's start with this point here. So I want to select the point here and the point also at the back. That's in the same position. So if I select with only select visible elements unchecked and I just drop this here, you see to select the back here and the front here. So let's hit our scale tool. So instead of doing this one by one, let's just select the top and the bottom together. So I'll hit 9 to bring my live selection tool up. Then with this already selected, I'll hold shift and then I'll select this to add the selection. So we can go to our scale tool now and we can scale those points this way on the z-axis. So I'll just drop it somewhere at the center here. Then I want to do that also for this point. So I'll go to my live selection tool. I'll select this point here. I also select this point here. Now hit T for my scale tool. Then I'll scale this on the z-axis. So that's okay for that area. So let's start adjusting to form this particular shape we have here. So let's go to our live selection tool. You can also hit 9 on your keyboard. You can always adjust the radius of your live selection tool here to make it bigger. Or you can hit these two keys on your keyboard to expand and reduce your selection. So I'll select this here and I'll just drag this point over to this area. I'll select this point. I'll drag this over to this area. Then I'll do this for these areas here. So next I'll add a loop cut at the center here. So let's just hit M and L and then add a loop cut at the center here. So once I add that cut, to make sure it's centered, I can go to my offset here and change this to 50%. Or I can hit these 3 lines here. Or I can hit my middle mouse button on the selection once I make it. So here also I'll add another loop cut at this area. And I can also centralize that. And I can add another loop cut also at this area. So I'm first adding this loop cut so I can shape the inside. So I'll select these points that have now been created inside here. Select these 3 points and then I will just move them this way. Then I can scale them downwards like this. And I also do that here. I'll drag them outwards a little bit, then I'll just scale them down here like this. So this way all we need to do is just add more loop cuts to define the edges, but let's add a subdivision surface and see what we have for now. So to add a subdivision surface to this object, make sure the object is selected and not the null. So I'll make sure my object is selected here, then I'll hold Alt and select this subdivision surface. So that will make the bottle a child of the subdivision surface. So if we go to our model mode here, this is what we should have. Let's just make this more defined, so we'll add more loop cuts. So I'll select my cylinder here and I'll go to my edge mode. So once I bring my loop cut tool, it will show us our subdivided mesh inside and show us our base mesh which is not subdivided outside. So we can make our cut and see how the subdivision surface is affecting it. So I just want to add some supporting edges here. Select this loop I just made now. So let's put our subdivision surface back on. And I just slide this towards the edge here. So we can drop this cut here for now. Then let's add more loop cuts. So I'll hit M and L on my keyboard. I will check this. So I'll add a loop cut here. Front and the back also here. And I'll add loop cut here and here. Let's see how that's looking. You can see this area is now more defined. I'll add another one here. I'll add another one here. So let's go to our model mode and see what we have. So I just want to reduce the sharpness here as this is too much. So I'll select this cylinder, go to my edge mode, uncheck this, and I'll just hit M and N on my keyboard to dissolve them. First I'll dissolve that loop to see what I have there. So I can work with this way without that edge, and if I want to make this smoother, you can go to your subdivision surface and then just increase these levels here to 3. And you see that will make that smoother on that area. So if you want yours sharper, you can add your cut here, or you can change the shape by adjusting the point to suit whatever you want. But for this tutorial, we'll just stop at this point. So if you look from the top of your model, you see that this also looks realistic from the inside. So let's just go ahead to add some more details to the body of this mesh. So I'll uncheck this here and I'll go to my cylinder. So at the base here, I will make a loop selection in my polygon mode. So I'll hit U and L to select this loop here. Then I'll hit I to insert the face. Then I'll hit T and scale this inwards this way. Then I'll go to my edge mode, UL, and then I'll select this loop. So you can just start shaping this to match the reference properly. So here I'll make a loop cut. Then I'll select that loop cut and I'll just scale that outwards a little bit this way. So let's go to the top. So at this area, I'll go to my polygon mode. I'll select this loop here. I will extrude it inwards. Then I'll scale it uniformly this way. And I can go to my edge mode here, select this loop, and I can scale this outwards here also. So if I put on my subdivision surface, this is what I should have. So we can just go ahead to make some of these cuts more defined. So we can come here and add more supporting edges. Maybe we can add the supporting edge here, add another one here. Then here I'll select this loop and adjust this to come in a little bit. Then I'll just drag this down to this point. Then you can come to the base, and if you're not satisfied with that, you can make more cuts or make some adjustments on your mesh. So if I expand my view and I bring the wine bottle in, these are the two products we've made now. So these next two objects are quite different from the first two. The difference is that they are not connections or combinations of perfect circles that vary in sizes. So this starts as a perfect circle, then flows into a custom shape. So this is not also difficult to make. So let's bring a cylinder in. So I'll add a cylinder and let's just drag that and place that properly. So this time around we'll be starting from the top here. Before we proceed, let's just name this appropriately. So let's group this first, OG, and then call this Sanitizer. Then we'll drag that into this product now here. So you should have your Sanitizer fat bottle and wine bottle. So let's hide the wine bottle and also hide the fat bottle by clicking this dot twice. So let's open this up and select this cylinder. So for the rotational segment, we can either start with 8, 10 or 12. But for this, let's start with 8 and then this we'll use 12 to see the difference. So with 8 rotational segments here selected, I'll hit C to make this object editable, this cylinder here. So I can just name this particular cylinder Sanitizer. So before I continue, I'll optimize my mesh. So let's hit U and O to optimize, and then that will connect the disconnected caps. So go to your polygon mode and let's select this loop over here. And I'll go to my move tool and just drag this to this point. So for this kind of product, you want to ensure that you don't affect the shape of this particular circle on top. So you leave it as a perfect circle. And if you want to change the shape of anything, we can start from this or we can start from the second extrusion. So this is where we'll find the difference between this product and the other product. So once we extrude here now and we switch to our scale tool, instead of scaling this uniformly by clicking outside here and then dragging everything together this way, instead we'll only click on the x-axis. So click and drag this way on the x-axis here. So that will form the shape that we want this circle to depart from. And then here also we'll just gradually drag this on the z-axis just a little bit here. So it's here you control the shape that you want to use throughout this reference. So I don't want this point here to be too sharp. So for now, I'll scale it inwards this way. Then I'll go to my polygon mode again and I'll just scale this outwards again here. So if I'm still not satisfied with this, I can still take it inwards a little, then scale it outwards here with my polygons. So now we can continue extruding here. So hold down Control and then extrude this way. Then I'll go to my scale tool and I'll just adjust this on my x-axis now. So let's just continue shaping this object. The key thing to note is that after I extrude, I only scale on the x-axis for this particular product. So once I'm done with that, I also go to the top here. I'll just give this a good top shape. So I extrude that inwards. I will extrude this outwards this way. Extrude it again. I'll scale it outwards. Extrude it upwards. Extrude it again. And scale it inwards here. Then I'll delete these polygons here. Hit delete. So remember here, when I was scaling, I didn't scale with my x-axis because this is a perfect circle. I scaled it uniformly, but from this point, I scaled it only on the x-axis. So that's how we created a transition between these perfect circles here and this custom shape here. So once we add our subdivision surface, this should look beautiful. So to add our subdivision surface, I'll hold Alt, then select the subdivision surface tool. So that will make our sanitizer the child of that subdivision surface. So if we go to our object mode, this is what this should look like. So I'll bring a cylinder in. Make sure I'm in my model mode so I can drag this properly. So now we're going to deal with our rotation as we extrude. So let's scale this in here and let's hit R to bring our rotation tool, and then we can rotate it this way. And if you want to rotate and snap it at different angles like this, you can hold Shift as you rotate. So I'll click on this cylinder. Let's group that appropriately. Let's just call this product 4. And also call this product 4. Then let's drag this entire null here into the product null. So I'll open this and then select the product 4 object. So you see, as we rotated, our gizmo also followed this rotation. And that is because this gizmo is on our local coordinate system. So if you click on this, it will change it to our world coordinate system. And that will align with the default direction of our workspace, as you can see. But if you change this back to local, you can also hit W to switch in and out of that. If you change this back to local here, you see it to follow the rotation of this object. So if we keep rotating this object, our gizmo will also follow the rotation. But if we change this back to world coordinate, it will revert to the default world coordinate system. So this is going to be important when we're trying to extrude around this mesh. So I'll undo this to what I had before. So here, let's use 12 segments. So I'll hit C to make that editable. And then before I go to any mode, I'll hit U and O to optimize this cylinder. So I'll go to my polygon mode and then use my loop selection to select these polygons here. Then for this, as I just explained, this is currently in our world coordinate system. So let's change this to our local coordinate system here this way. So if our local coordinate system also moves, I'll show you how you can adjust it back to fit into the direction that our polygons are facing. So let's just drag this up here. Then I'll go to my object mode and scale this properly to start from where I want it to start from. Great, so let's return to our polygon mode. And with this selected, we can first make this a perfect circle. So let's scale this uniformly. I'll go to my move tool and just drag this to this point. Then from our next extrusion, let's rotate this. So once I rotate this and I switch back to my gizmo tool, you see that still in our local coordinate system, our gizmo did not follow our rotation. But not to worry, this is how we can change that. So you can come over here and click your axis mode. So once this axis mode is selected, you can only move your gizmo. You can't move your object or any other thing in your scene. So this is how you can set your gizmo to wherever you want it to be set. So with the axis mode selected here, let's rotate this gizmo to fit how we want it to fit. So let's hit R on our keyboard to enable our rotate tool. Then let's just rotate the gizmo this way to follow how we rotated the object. So you see this is not affecting the object at all. This is just the gizmo. So I'll place the gizmo here this way. And if I switch back to my move tool, you see I have this aligned. So now I can hit T. Then I'll uncheck this axis mode. If you don't uncheck this axis mode, we can't continue shaping our object. So uncheck this axis mode here, and we can scale this on the x-axis alone. Then I'll use E to move this way. So I can also use this blue icon to move my object freely in this 2D space. So what that does is that it isolates only the z-axis, and as you see, once I put it here, it selects only the y and the x-axis. So let's shape this into position. So I'll hit T, and then I'll just start shaping this. So I'll just shape this. I rotate this back a little bit. I'll move it here. And I'll go to my move tool and extrude this again. I'll rotate it. Then I'll scale it. So I'll keep repeating these actions. So to extrude, I'll hold Control and then click and drag on the axis that I want. Then I'll use R to rotate and I'll use T to scale. So let's just keep shaping the mesh to align with the reference. Then at this area, I will ignore any detail for now, and I'll just do this holistically like this. So also remember, I'm not scaling uniformly, I'm scaling only on the x-axis here. So for the base here, once I insert the face, because we've been rotating our local coordinate, we can now switch back to our world coordinate because this is now a flat angle. So if I hit W, I'll change that back to my world coordinate. So I'll just create this base for myself this way. So to create these details here, let's go to our live selection tool, then go to our point mode. Then we'll select these points and we'll just start shaping them accordingly here this way. So I'll also do that for this area here. So we need to create two other cuts inside here. So let's go to our polygon mode and I'll use UL to select this loop. Then I'll hit I on my keyboard and then I'll just extrude this inwards this way. And I'll go to my point mode now and I'll just shape this point in here. So here we can add another loop cut to support this edge. So M and L. Let's just add another loop cut here. So one more thing to get this detail perfectly, let's select that loop. So let's go to our polygon mode, then select this loop here. T on your keyboard. Then let's just scale this on the Z-axis. Scale this inwards. Then we can go to the top here. Then I'll go to our local coordinate system so that I have this in this flat angle. Then I'll just extrude this outwards here. And I can scale it in and delete the polygons we have here. So let's add the subdivision surface to see what we have. So I'll go here, add the subdivision surface. I'll drag it into this product node here. And I'll drag this product into the subdivision surface here. So this is what we should have. But let's add some loop cuts here to define the edges. So I'll select this product in my object panel. I can uncheck the subdivision surface. Then I'll hit M and L on my keyboard and I'll add a loop cut here. I can also add a loop cut here and add another loop cut here. So let's see how that looks. Great. So I want to drag these areas out a little bit. I can go here. Then in my point mode and using my live selection, I can go ahead to select all these points. These are the points I want to drag out. So I'll just hold shift and then add all these selections here. And yes, we can also add these guys here. And I'll hit T on my keyboard and I'll just scale it out on this axis. Then I can also drag it out on this axis here. So let's subdivide to see what we have. So that adds some flatness to that area. But let's just adjust this inwards a little so that it doesn't look too flat. So you can also do the same thing for the front. So at this area, I'll add a loop cut and that will be all we'll do for the body of this product. So I'll add a loop cut over here and add one more here. And this is what we should have. So let's go ahead to create the covers. For this, I'll bring a cylinder in and I can collapse this viewport here. Then I'll drag it over to this area. So let's expand this viewport still. So for this cover, I want to create some interesting extrusions at the side. So that means I'll need more segments than we currently have. So I'll just change this to 72. If you want this to be more, you can go higher and can set this to 80. So I'll make this object editable and then I'll hit U and O to optimize my cylinder. So because I want to see the base of this mesh, I want to isolate this mesh and work only on this cover. So to do that, you can come here to your solo option. If you click and hold this down, to bring these options. So once you selected this object, you can select viewport solo single and that will isolate only this object. If you want to isolate a null, then once you click that null, because it's a group of objects, once you come to your options here, you select viewport solo hierarchy. So we're working only on this cylinder for now. So we can only see the cylinder because we've isolated it. So I'll go to the top here and select these polygons. Let's collapse our viewport so that we see what we're working on. Then I'll go to my move tool. Then I'll just extrude this and then I'll scale this uniformly. So I'll switch to my scale tool and just scale this way. Then we can add a loop cut inside here just to hold this. So for these polygons at the base, I'll select them and I'll just delete them. So the next thing we'll do will be to make this thicker. So let's select all the polygons. And then we'll hit D on our keyboard. We'll make sure create caps is checked. Then we'll just extrude this outward this way. So that will create some thickness for us. Then I'll select my loop cut tool. Then I'll make a cut here to define where I want to start creating this detail. So I want to create this detail only in these areas. So you notice I extruded before trying to create these details, and that's because I only want the details to affect the polygons on the outside. So I'll select an empty area, then I can start selecting this way. Currently our normals are not aligned. The blue is meant to show on the inside, so we can correct that later. So I'll just go around and select that way. Then I'll hit I to extrude all these polygons I've selected now. Then I'll hit D and make sure I uncheck create caps. So now I extrude this way. So if we go to our model mode, this is what we should have. So let's go to our edge mode and add some loop cuts here. And then we'll add a loop cut here and add another loop cut here. So let's correct the normals. If I go to our polygon mode and I hit Ctrl A on my keyboard to select all the polygons, then I'll right click, then I'll select reverse normals. So now let's add the subdivision surface. So now we have this. Let's just add some loop cuts to make these edges more defined. So I'll select the object here. I can uncheck the subdivision surface for now. Then I'll hit ML on my keyboard, and then I'll just add a loop cut here, and I'll add another loop cut here. Then I'll also go here and add another loop cut. So I'll put my subdivision surface back on, and I'll also add a loop cut at the base here, this area, and then this area also. And I can come inside and then add the subdivision surface here. So if I go to my model mode, this is what I should have. So now let's bring the other objects back. So you can go to your solo here, and then you can select the viewport solo off. So let's just drag this cylinder down a little bit. So I'll group this and name it properly. Then I'll drag it into the fat bottom null here. So that's this entire group. So let's go ahead to make the cover of the sanitizer. So before I continue, I just want to make some adjustments to the scale here. And that doesn't affect much of what we've done before. So I'll hit 0 on my keyboard to bring the rectangular selection tool. And I'll just select all these edges here. I'll put my subdivision surface back on. I'll scale this a little bit. I'll hit 0 again to make a rectangular selection. And I'll scale this way. I'll just drag this down a little bit. I'll hit 0 also for these areas. And I'll just scale it out this way. So that's just making sure our scale matches the reference perfectly. So now let's bring a cylinder in to create this cover. So we'll create these two objects separately. We can create both of them from the same mesh, but I'll create them separately in case you want to animate this later on. So let's get a cylinder. Then I'll place that cylinder in the right position here. Then for this, I can work with 12 segments since I just need perfect circles. So I'll hit C on my keyboard to make this editable, then I'll hit U and O to optimize this mesh. Then I'll go to my polygon mode. Then before I start shaping this, I just want to isolate this cover for now. So with this object selected, I'll go to my solo option here, and then I'll choose viewport solo single. So I'll go to my polygon mode, I'll select these polygons here, and I'll delete them. Then I'll go over to these polygons here. I'll use I to extrude it inwards, and then I'll drag it up a little bit. Then I'll switch to my scale tool and just scale this in this way. Then I'll extrude this upwards. I'll use I to extrude it inwards again. I'll just take that up a little bit, and I can use my scale tool to adjust this way. So here I'll just take this in and I'll delete those polygons there. Then I'll bring a new cylinder for this top. So I'll take the cylinder and place it at the starting position. Then because of the details I'll be creating here, I can use 12 segments, I can use 10 segments, I can use 14 segments. So I'll use 12 segments for this. So I'll just change this to 12 rotational segments. Then I'll hit C to make that editable, and I'll hit U and O to optimize that mesh and connect the caps. So the caps are connected. Then in my edge mode, I'll make loop cuts here and another loop cut here. So I can go to my object mode and still scale this up. Then in my polygon mode, I'll go to my live selection tool. Then I'll make sure only select visible elements is unchecked. Then I'll just select these two polygons here, and that will mark out this area for me. So here I'll switch to my move tool and then I'll just extrude this outwards. Remember, I'm holding control and dragging out to extrude this. So the next thing I'll do will be to flatten this out. So I'll use my scale tool to do that. So I'll go to my scale tool, then I'll just scale this and hold shift down until this flattens out to 0. Then now I can just extrude this way, and this way. Then I'll go to my point mode, use my live selection tool to start selecting these points and adjusting them appropriately. So you see we should already have this shape here. So I'll go to my polygon mode and I'll do the same for this back. So I'll select this polygon here and you select this and this. So I'll extrude this, I'll flatten it out on the x-axis. Then I'll extrude it again. Then I'll go to my point mode and use my live selection tool to adjust this properly. So let's isolate only this object. So I'll go to my solo tool and then click viewport solo single again. So the next thing I'll do will be to make this topology here flow a different way. So I can make loop cut across this object this way. So currently if I bring my loop cut tool, you see that this doesn't continue along the area I want. And even if we uncheck stop cut at end gun and at pole, it will still not give us the type of cut we want. So what we'll do is that we'll dissolve some of these edges and we'll connect them how we want. So first things first, I'll select these diagonal edges and I'll just hit M and N on my keyboard to dissolve them. Then I'll also select these diagonal edges here and I'll hit M and N on my keyboard to dissolve them. So I'll hit M and K to bring my line cut tool. So I'll cut this way. I'll hit escape to deactivate the tool temporarily. Then I'll also cut from this point to this point. So I can hit escape there. So I can leave this way, or I can also connect here to here and then this point to this point. So now if we bring our loop cut tool, you see that we can make a cut around this object this way. So before we make that loop cut, let's just delete these polygons here. We still have some areas to shape here. So let's go to our point mode, take our live selection tool, and we can just drag all these points here down. So that will create that slope for us here. So now let's add our subdivision surface. So all we need to do now is to make some corners tighter. So let's select our object, and in our edge mode, I'll bring my loop cut tool. Then I'll make a loop cut here this way. And I can also make a loop cut here. Make another loop cut here. And if we go to our model mode, let's see what we have. So to open this area up, let's uncheck the subdivision surface for now. Then I'll just select all these polygons here. Then I'll hit Ctrl A. I'll hit D on my keyboard to bring my extrude tool. Then I'll hit reset values here to reset all the values. Then I'll check create caps here. So I'll extrude this inwards this way. So let's straighten out this area. So I'll go to my edge mode. Then I'll hit U and L to select this edge here. So to straighten this out, I want my gizmo to also follow the rotation of this particular area. So let's collapse our views to see this properly here. So I'll make sure I'm working in the local coordinate system. Then I'll enable the axis here and just rotate only my gizmo. So now if I uncheck the axis here, I can select my scale tool and just scale this down to 0. So now that area should be flat, and we can just scale this also inwards a little bit this way. So now when we put our subdivision surface back on, this is what we should have. So here we can scale this inwards and add a supporting edge at the center here to make that more defined. Then we can add another supporting edge here also. So for now I'll leave that this way, but you can shape yours to fit perfectly. So I'll also go over here and make sure I add a loop cut tool at this area and at this area also. So we can go to our object mode and see what we have. So let's bring our other objects back. So I'll put this solo off here. So for this particular cylinder, let's add its own subdivision surface. and then we'll add the appropriate loop cuts to make some edges more defined. Thank you for joining this class. In our next class, we'll be learning how to extrude new shapes from an existing mesh, and we'll also be modeling this complete kettle. So ensure you subscribe, and remember you can support this initiative by grabbing the product reference bundle in the description below, and you can also support by getting a Vogbot NFT on OpenSea, where you also get a free animated fashion NFT for every piece bought. All this information can be found in the description below.